up, and I think Trey Lance is going to be on this team for a number of reasons. Number one, he's not going to be better served anywhere else, right? He's not. You telling me that Trey Lance, a guy who hasn't been able to figure it out 3 years in one situation, is going to, in 3 weeks, get caught up and be an asset to another team? I don't think so. There's nowhere where he's going to plop down as a starting quarterback anywhere in the league. Backup quarterback positions have pretty much been defined. And let me tell you, you don't want a backup quarterback who's got a guaranteed $5 million coming to him next year. And even though Trey Lance is on his rookie deal, there is a lot of cost prohibitive inflexibility in his contract that is going to prevent the Niners or another team from really wanting to trade for him. It's an odd situation, but his best option, I mean, if Trey Lance gets over his embarrassment or whatever he's feeling, his anger, when Trey Lance gets over that and he really starts thinking about this, the single best option for him is to play well Friday night against the Chargers and then ride out the football season with the 49ers, where he may be, due to the fact football's a violent sport, thrust into action. And then he over-delivers on what is now an under-promised career. It's exactly what happened for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy was just waiting in line, biding his time. He got a shot, and look at what he did with it. Trey Lance, he might have had his shot. His shot was taken away from him due to a couple of injuries, and it all stinks. And again, life is timing, and the timing on all that totally sucks. But man, oh man, it's done. It's done. And I don't think there's anyone coming to get Trey Lance out of the situation. And I don't think the 49ers are going to try to get rid of Trey Lance because he means more to them as a third-string quarterback than he does as an asset that gets traded for whatever that return is at this particular time. Here are the Trey Lance facts, okay? Here are the facts. These are indisputable. The fact is, he just is not good enough to be trusted by Kyle Shanahan. No matter your opinion, Kyle's opinion trumps your opinion on what he needs out of quarterback. And Trey Lance has never been able to win over his audience of one. He's got an audience of one. Trey Lance doesn't need to win over anybody but Kyle Shanahan, and he has not been able to do that. And at the same time, he was given the keys to the kingdom. It just was a kingdom that got shut down due to injury. So I think that we can look at all this now and say he should have never been the pick. I mean, hindsight is always 20/20, and there was a tantalizing prospect that was so raw and unknown. Kyle Shanahan fell for the tantalizing maybe. For the first time in his player evaluation career, he went with what I think could be there, and that outweighed what I see with my own two eyes. The Warriors did the same thing with James Wiseman. The allure of what might be trumped the reality of what was. What was an underprepared to compete at the highest level player that you just picked to compete at the highest level. James Wiseman was drafted based on what he might be, not what he was or is. And then it never developed the way that they needed it to. And Trey Lance, the very similar thing has happened. Everyone, we're talking about here are the facts of Trey Lance. He should have never been a pick. It is a failure of draft evaluation. It is a failure of the evaluation of where your team is in its own life cycle and what your team really needs. And it's a failure in a way of development. And all of that failure is Kyle's. I'm not here to tell you that Kyle is some infallible football entity. He has failed in the Trey Lance experiment. It would be even more of a failure, though, to try to make sure that the square peg fits in the triangle hole. When it doesn't work, the best time to cut bait on a bad investment is today. And again, they're not even cutting bait because his investment might still be proven to them after all. We don't know. And that is the best thing that Trey Lance has got going for him. People still don't know. The people who want to tell you that he's never going to make it in this league are as wrong and as uninformed as all the dip fanboys who wanted to tell you that the next greatest quarterback of all time was sitting right there all along. No, you didn't know. No one knows. The jury's still very much out on this guy. What we do know, again, these are the Trey Lance facts. These are facts. Everybody that he deals with really, really likes him. His teammates like him. His coach likes him. His owner likes him. He is a hard worker. He is a student of the game. He is a dedicated professional. There are a lot of reasons to like Trey Lance. He checks all of the intangible boxes. So now we're at simply, what do you do when you are out on the field? And the answer is not enough to have won the trust and confidence of Kyle Shanahan. And he's got an audience of one. Albert Breer laid down a fact about Trey Lance, which is going to make moving him difficult. Fact is, Trey Lance is on his rookie deal, but the money is not some non-factor for teams who might be interested. He's only got $940,000 left on his deal this year, but he is due a fully guaranteed $5.31 million next season, and no one wants to play with a raw backup quarterback at that salary, Niners included. I mean, they got Sam Darnold for $3 million. Who would want Trey for $5 million? When he can't even beat out Sam Darnold at 3. Now, the saving grace there is we know what Sam Darnold's ceiling probably is. It's the floor that Kyle is interested in his backup quarterback. His backup quarterback is not being evaluated by how great could you be. His backup quarterback is being evaluated by the premise of how much of a drop-off would you represent should I have to go to you. Trey Lance might still have this huge ceiling that he will reach one day, but that doesn't make him an ideal backup quarterback. A quarterback that is your backup quarterback is a known entity. It's how so many, you don't think that guy is very good, but he continues to stick around. Well, he continues to stick around the NFL because coaches know what they're going to get. You know what you're not going to get, but you also kind of know what you're going to get. Trey Lance is a big unknown to have as a backup. Beyond all that, I think an actual fact of Trey Lance is he has done nothing to outplay what was the scouting report on him. Everyone coming out of North Dakota State said, here's a big kid who, when he was on the best team in the division that he played at, and North Dakota State is the Alabama of the Division I AA, wherever the hell North Dakota is, he's a big kid who looks fantastic when he's out there playing inferior teams made up of inferior opponents who he can out physical and out athletic on the way to a successful afternoon. But none of those afternoons really possessed that much unbelievable passing ability. And that's who he remains. The kid's a football player, but he's the polar opposite of the type of player that you would have assumed Kyle Shanahan would have wanted. And Kyle talked himself into something in Trey Lance that I don't think he even really believed in. I think he was worried about the NFL catching up with Kyle Shanahan tendencies. So he wanted to draft a player to get him to out-imagine his own coaching tendencies, because here's someone who can do things that I used to not have in terms of he can do these things. So I think Kyle lost the bullseye of what he's really looking for as he decided looking for something a little different might be more important than sticking with the formula that has gotten him, let's face it, to 3 of the last 4 NFC title games. Another fact about Trey Lance is just a fact about this league. The NFL waits for no one. You develop along the timeline that the team needs you to develop, or that team's not going to need you. The NFL waits for absolutely no one. And it doesn't matter how much I invested into trade up to trade for you. If you ain't the guy, getting out of that situation as quickly as possible is always the right thing to do. And you just got to wear that. It was a bad choice. You got to wear it. You got to wear it. And what a lot of people just seem to have forgotten here is that Trey Lance would still be pinging right in the middle of the 49ers quarterbacking radar, but for the other plane that flew into the 49er airspace. And that was Brock Purdy. A fundamental step in Trey Lance's lack of development is that they have unearthed the guy who is developed in the way that Kyle wants his quarterback to develop as fast as humanly possible. The player that they hoped to have found with the third pick overall was actually found at pick number 262. It's easy to say, Kyle really screwed up the Trey Lance draft pick. And he did. It's probably the single biggest error that is going to be attached to him as a head coach and general manager in his career. How about this? He won't be allowed to make another mistake of this size. But the fact that he's going to survive this, he's going to sail right through it. The best friend Kyle Shanahan, the general manager, ever had was Kyle Shanahan, the coach. But for Kyle Shanahan, the coach, Kyle Shanahan, the general manager, does not survive this. But he is both sides of the same coin. So while you can be disappointed on one side, the other side is leaving the 49ers very, very satisfied that they've got the right guy running the operation. Having said all of that, at no point in time has it not been in Kyle's best interest to have Trey Lance succeed. So to say that Kyle has tried to sabotage this so he can get out of it is just an absurd position to take. An absolute absurd position to take. Trey Lance succeeding only makes Kyle look smarter. Trey Lance failing like this only makes Kyle look worse. You would have to figure that all ties between Darnold and Lance would have gone to Lance just based on he's younger, he's yours, he's your pick, he's your project. There was no tie in between the runner and the bag, okay? There wasn't a tie. Sam Darnold outperformed Trey Lance to the point where Kyle decided he was going to walk away from something that would have served his own best interests to do the right thing by the football team. And look, Kyle is able to survive this moment that people say, well, this should be the moment he's fired over. He keeps on getting to the NFC title game. And again, there's people who want to use that against him. Well, he doesn't go past that. Okay. You've convinced yourself that winning Super Bowls is easy. Winning Super Bowls is not easy for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. There's no such thing as that was an easy Super Bowl to win since the 1985 Chicago Bears. Kyle has made one of the worst draft picks in recent football history. And if you want to plant your flag in that, you wouldn't be wrong at this particular time. But if you're going to plant your flag in that, you also have to acknowledge that if Kyle made one of the worst draft picks ever, he also made the single greatest draft pick the NFL has ever seen if Brock Purdy really materializes into this team's going forward for 6, 7, 8 years level of franchise quarterback. If that's who Brock Purdy becomes, not only did Kyle make the wrong draft pick, he made the single greatest draft pick in the history of the NFL draft or any sport ever. If he really does have a franchise quarterback coming off the board with the last pick in the draft, good God, that'll never happen again. There will be more utter failures, and there have been more utter failures with the third overall pick of the NFL draft than there will ever be success stories with the last pick of the NFL draft. And look at what Kyle's got going on there. There's no running or hiding from the awkwardness of this moment. But as all of the pearl clutching, breathless overreaction to something that, again, there hasn't even been a transaction. There is no trade. It doesn't feel like there's a trade coming. It doesn't feel like there's really a market for Trey Lance, and Trey Lance is not going to just be cut. The Niners owe it to him to waive him. What are you, out of your mind? The Niners don't owe him anything other than the money he's got coming to him, and he'll get every penny of that. That's what the Niners owe him. They don't owe him shit other than the agreed upon contract. Playing time is not in that contract. It's not. There's a very good chance that Trey Lance could be the 49ers starting quarterback at the end of this year. I don't think there's a very good chance that he's going to be the starting quarterback anywhere else this year. Even a team that went out of their way to really accelerate, promote him. Are you telling me that Trey Lance, a guy who hasn't been able to figure it out in 3 years in this system, is going to show up and within 3 weeks be ready to go in a completely new system with a completely new language, completely new teammates, completely new playbook? It just doesn't feel like the guy with the least amount of experience ever drafted is going to show up and represent, I've got enough experience to help you out anywhere. The best thing for Trey Lance is for him to sit right where he is, take his medicine, continue to grind, continue to be a student of the game, continue to study, continue to practice, and then see where his career takes him. There's an awful lot of moving parts to a football season which, by the way, we have yet to even begin.